Right, let's start today's session. In the last session, we were discuss about .NET introduction, that is .NET Core introduction we discussed. And in today's session, I will continue the introduction to .NET. Now we can see, as I said that in the last session, .NET is a framework tool. It's a product of Microsoft. And in this .NET Core, I'm going to discuss about these subjects like C#.NET, ASP.NET Core with MVC, ASP.NET Core with Entity Framework, Web API, ADV.NET, and SQL Server. Those who are not attended my first session, that is in the last lecture, I strongly recommend to watch this first video in YouTube channel, DURGASOFT YouTube channel. So those who already attended in the last session, you know very well. So which subjects I'm going to cover, I just explained in the last lecture. And the .NET stands for Network Enabled Technology or Network Enterprise Technology. But according to Microsoft, there is no abbreviation for .NET. So I'm going to teach completely .NET Core, not .NET Framework. .NET first version was released in the year of 2002. From 2002 to 2015, .NET Framework, that is platform dependent, which will run on only Windows operating system. From 2016 onwards, Microsoft has introduced .NET Core, which makes applications are platform independent, which can run on all operating system. What editor tool we are going to use in .NET programming means we use Visual Studio 2022. And today I'm going to continue. .NET Framework means it's a collection of libraries. So framework means it's a collection of libraries. Once we install Visual Studio Editor along with the .NET Framework, and lot of libraries will be installed. Libraries means predefined classes, predefined functions. You can use it directly without implementing from scratch. So libraries are nothing but just ready-made resources, we can call it as. So ready-made resources means readily available that libraries, we can use it into your application. That is mainly .NET libraries importance. So all the libraries will come in the form of framework only. So I'm trying to tell you .NET Framework versions and Visual Studio versions. And also I will discuss .NET Core versions. Also I'll discuss. Core versions are different, framework versions are different. So Visual Studio, yes, this is the Visual Studio versions. As I said that the first version of .NET is .NET was released in the year of 2002. So .NET Framework 1.0 it is. At the time Microsoft released VS, Visual Studio. Later 1.1, that is Visual Studio 2003. VS 2003 only. This is Visual Studio 2003. So 1.1 is the framework version. Visual Studio 2023 is the what we can say 2003 is the Visual Studio version. Then 2.0 .NET Framework and Visual Studio 2005. And 3.0 Microsoft has not released any Visual Studio version. That's what I'm using, not applicable. So they were recommended to use Visual Studio 2005 only for .NET Framework 3.0 also. Next 4.0. So 4.0 is the framework version. At the time, Microsoft has given the version called Visual Studio 2008. VS 2008. Sorry, 3.5 is there. So 2008, it is called 3.5 .NET Framework 3.5 version. Coming to this 4.0 version, Microsoft has provided the version is VS 2010. 10. Visual Studio 2010. 4.5 is there. Visual Studio 2012. Visual Studio 2012. 4.6. Visual Studio 2015. Visual Studio 2015. 4.7.1 or 7.2, both 4.7.1 and 7.2. In that context, Microsoft provide the editor tool called Visual Studio 2017. Actually, it is 4.7. Okay, now 4.7 2017, 4.7.1 and 2 2019 is there. 2019, VS 2019. And now latest version of .NET Framework is 4.8 VS 2022. Visual Studio 2022. So these are the .NET Framework versions and Visual Studio version. But I'm not going to tell you any .NET Framework things. I'm going to use .NET Core versions. I'll also explain .NET Core versions here. But even though we are using Visual Studio 2022, but I'm not going to select any framework version. If in case if you want to work with .NET Framework, the latest version of .NET Framework is 4.8 only. Along with Visual Studio 2022, we have to work. But I'm trying to discuss in our entire the sessions .NET Core only. So .NET Core versions also separately there. So I'm explaining the .NET Core versions now. Which version I'm going to teach you means already I discussed in the last lecture, .NET 6, that means core version that is. So now coming to this .NET Core, as I said that .NET Core was introduced in the year of 2016. So .NET Core 1.0 this is. First 1.0 is the .NET Core version. It is released in the year of 2016, sir. 2016. .NET Core 2.0 here. It released in the year of 2018. .NET Core 3.0. It released in the year of 2019. .NET Core 3.1. Yes, it's about 2019 only. Yes. Next, .NET Core 5.0. So it's about to release like it's released 2020. .NET Core 6.0. What we are going to discuss, this is the version 2021. And the latest version of .NET Core is 7.0, but it's not a stable version. So latest version is not a stable version. Stable version means what version companies still they are using in the real-time industry. That is called stable version. But actually, stable version was 3.1 for a few months back, but now the stable version is 6.0 only stable version because the companies are using 6.0 now. So this is released in the year of 2023, sir. So these are the .NET Core versions. So .NET Core 6.0 or we can say .NET 6, .NET Core 7.0 or we can say .NET 7. So you are going to learn .NET 6. That means core version 6.0 you are going to learn. In our session, I will create all the application with .NET Core 6.0 version only. Okay. For this, what we have to use Visual Studio means Visual Studio 2022. And one more important things are to work with the .NET application, what softwares are required means two softwares I strongly recommend to download and install. One is Visual Studio 2022 and the next one is SQL Server 2022 or 2019. Anyone you can use. These two softwares are required, sir. If you want to work with the .NET applications and if you want to what we can say manage our .NET application code, these two softwares are required. Visual Studio is for completely developing C#.NET Logic, ASP.NET Entity Framework MVC, and SQL Server is for database creation, database management purpose. We use SQL Server. So these two softwares, once you download and install, then you can able to easily develop .NET applications possible. These two softwares freely available in Microsoft.com official website. So we have to download community version. I'll tell you how to download and install in the next session, not a problem. So next, coming to this here, .NET Core version and .NET Framework versions with respect of Visual Studio also explained. But now coming to this, C#.NET versions are different. But which version of C#.NET we are going to learn means .NET 6 I'm using. That means C#.NET 10 version. .NET 7 if we go, C#.NET 11 version. I will also discuss C#.NET versions also clearly once I start C#.NET introduction and C#.NET programming language code only. But meanwhile, I would like to discuss what .NET components are there. So what are the .NET components? How to work with the .NET components, we'll see. But before that .NET components, I would like to explain about .NET code execution process. That means what? You can choose any programming language in .NET, like C#, .NET, VB, .NET, F#, .NET, any language. But no matter what language you have chosen, but after completion of writing the code, so whenever we start executing the program, then how the code is going to be executed means this is. So C#.NET, for example, our language is C#.NET. So once I write logic part in C#.NET programming language, then how to execute the C#.NET code means, so there is an execution procedure is there. Normally, when we consider C++ programming language, there is only one compilation is there. Okay, but when it comes to .NET, there are two compilation takes place here. So what are the two compilation takes place? How to work with them? We'll see now. So this is the execution process exactly. I'll tell you how the code is going to be executed. Let me show you the execution process diagrams. So somewhere it is diagram is there, execution process, code execution process that I'm trying to show you. Or else I'll draw the diagram, not a problem. So execution process, code execution process is there. Okay. Yeah. There is no execution process. Let me try to show you. No, it's not about the .NET execution. Yeah, no problem. I'll try to show you the execution process here. Normally, whatever the code we write in C#.NET language, that code is called source code. SSE means source code. Generally, source code is compiled by respective language compiler, that is LC. LC means language compiler. After successfully compilation, then language compiler will generate a separate code that is called MSIL, Microsoft Intermediate Language Code. So here SSE means source code, LC means language compiler, MSIL means Microsoft Intermediate Language, or CIL, Common Intermediate Language, or IL, Intermediate Language. So this is first compilation takes place in the .NET code execution process. Code execution process. So when we write code in C#.NET language, that is called source code. Source code is compiled by language compiler. After compilation successfully, the language compiler will provide a special type of code which is related to Microsoft. That code is called MSIL, Microsoft Intermediate Language, or Common Intermediate Language, or Intermediate Language. Up to here, first compilation takes place. In the second compilation, this MSIL code can be transferred to CLR. CLR is the most important component in .NET. So CLR stands for Common Language Runtime. How Java programmers uses JVM, Java Virtual Machine, same in .NET we use CLR, Common Language Runtime. So the code can be transferred, that MSIL code can be transferred to CLR, and CLR is having a compiler called JIT, just-in-time compiler. Again, this MSIL code is compiled by JIT compiler, and after successful compilation, code can be executed by CLR. Once the code execution completed by CLR, CLR produce the code called native code. It also called as byte code or system understandable code. Native code or byte code, we can say that. This byte code can be transferred to operating system for further process. This is what actually happening when we write .NET code and when we go for compilation and execution. These things will be takes place internally. So here SC means what's are actually source code. We can say that source code means before compiling the code. LC means what actually language compiler. Language compiler, we can say that LC means. MSIL means Microsoft Intermediate Language Code. Microsoft Intermediate Language Code, we can say that LC means. MSIL means. This is also called as CIL. CL means Common Intermediate Language Code. Common Intermediate Language Code. Now IL also possible. This is called Intermediate Language Code. Anyone you can call it as. So programmers used to call many times MSIL or CL or IL. So CLR stands for what, Common Language Runtime. CLR means Common Language Runtime. Common Language Runtime, we can call it as CLR. So JIT means just-in-time compiler here. It is another compiler in CLR, just-in-time compiler only. So always second compilation will take place faster. Why? Because most of the code will be compiled in the first compilation only, but minimum code will compiled in the JIT compilation of CLR. So here, when we write any language code like C#.NET, VB.NET, JSharp.NET, because .NET supports multiple language, if you take any language code, the code execution process will be look like only. Normally, source code is compiled by respective language compiler. If you write source code in C#.NET, then C# language compiler is there here. If you write code in VB.NET, then VB.NET compiler is there. That is the difference. Source code is compiled by language compiler. It produces after successful compilation MSIL code or CL code or IL code. This is the first compilation takes place. In the second compilation, the MSIL code can transfer to CLR. In CLR, there is a compiler called JIT compiler. This compiler will compile the code and it will transfer to CLR. CLR will execute the code finally. That is called native code. CLR will produce the native code or byte code. This code can be transferred to operating system for further process. This is code execution process. Normally in C++ languages, code can be compiled only once. But when it comes to C#.NET, code can be compiled twice. So normal first compilation, language compiler will be involved. In the second compilation, CLR JIT compiler will be involved. That is the case actually. Okay. Yes. Now coming to this, .NET components are there. .NET components. So these are very, very important components in .NET. Without these components, we can't able to write the code. We can't able to run the code. What are the main components of .NET means? First component is BCL. That means base class library. Base class library, we can say that. Base class library. Or it also called as FCL. That means framework class library. Framework class library, we can say that. Next one is CLR. It's called about common language runtime. Common language runtime, we can say that. CLR means. So these two are very, very important components in .NET. So without these two components, we can't able to write the code. We can't able to run the code. So obviously, if you want to write something coding program or coding pattern in .NET, you should use libraries like base class libraries or framework class libraries. After completion of writing your code with the help of base class libraries or framework class libraries, so you need to execute the code. To execute the code, what is required means common language runtime is required. CLR is required. So running purpose or execution purpose, CLR is required. For writing .NET code, .NET programming purpose, we use base class libraries are required. I'm explaining about first base class libraries because without base class libraries, you cannot able to write the code. See, base class libraries are building blocks of .NET. Without base class libraries, you can't write .NET programming. Base class libraries are just similar to C++ header files and Java packages. In .NET programming, base class libraries, by default, it will be installed. Whenever we install .NET Framework software along with Visual Studio, all built-in libraries will be available. Using this built-in libraries only, we can able to start writing the code. But if you take any application like console, web application, Windows Forms application, on the top of the program, the relevant libraries are required to include. By default in .NET, the type of application when we choose, based on the type of application, by default, some libraries will be included on the top of the program. But in case if existing libraries are already available, libraries are not required for you, you can import your own libraries by using keyword. So whenever we start coding part, you will understand clearly what are the libraries will come by default on the top of the program. So simple, these are very much similar to C++ header files. How C language programmers and C++ programmers, they'll write header files like hash include stdivh, hash include conio.h. Same that Java people, how they'll use import packages on the top of the program. Same in .NET, we use base class libraries. In .NET, base class libraries also called as what? Namespaces. Namespaces means we have to use namespace on the top of the program. And every namespace is having built-in classes. And there are two types of namespaces or libraries are there: built-in libraries and user-defined libraries. User-defined means as a programmer, we need to create our own namespace. Built-in libraries means by default, it will come automatically whenever we install .NET Framework software. So base class libraries are in the form of two different ways. What are the two different ways are there? Base class libraries means first way is .exe. Second one is DLL. .exe means executable file. DLL stands for dynamic link library. We can say that dynamic link library. So .exe file is an executable file. It will run by default itself. Whenever you double click on .exe file, automatically it will execute, sir. Why? Because every .exe file is having an entry point. So what is entry point in .NET means main method. Static void main method is called entry point. We can say that. So every .exe file is having an entry point. Entry point of the program means main method, that is static void main. So because of static void main is there in this .exe, so it is called main file or executable file. It will run directly. But when it comes to DLL, this is not a main file. It's not about executable file. DLL is nothing but dynamic link library. DLL is dynamic link library means it is just supportive file. Yes, it is called what, sir? Supportive file. We can say that. DLL is nothing but supportive file. This supportive file, it will support to .exe at the time of executing the programs. So dynamically, it will add some libraries to the .exe. That's what we can say. DLL means dynamic link library. Dynamic means runtime. Link means adding. What it will add, required libraries will add it to the .exe only. That's the reason DLL file is not a main file. It is a supportive file only. And we are going to show, we are going to learn in our lectures how to create DLL file, how to reuse this DLL file in other applications. I'm going to teach you clearly. So dynamic link library, DLL file is also there, supportive file it is. So every base class library is in the form of two different ways. One is .exe and DLL. Most of the interviews, they'll ask you the question, what is the difference between DLL and .exe? So you should say .exe is a main file. It is called executable file. .exe contain entry point, that is static void main method, whereas DLL is nothing but dynamic link library. It is just a supportive file, we can say that. What file it is? Supportive file, dynamic link library. Okay, this is what these are the base class libraries. Without base class libraries, we cannot able to write .NET code. We cannot able to write programming part. So after completing the programming part by using this base class libraries, and if you want to run your program or execute your program, what is required again? CLR is required. So common language runtime. The name itself, the definition is there. So CLR is the main component in entire the .NET. So it will provide runtime environment or execution environment for .NET applications. Without CLR, we cannot able to run our .NET program. So how CLR can understand all the different languages, rules and regulations means, because .NET supports multiple languages. No, some programmers, they might use C# .NET logic. Some programmers might be use Java, VB.NET, J#, F#, JScript. So many languages are there. But how CLR can understand every language syntactical rules and regulation means. So CLR is the main component. It's having sub-component also. So what is the sub-component means? This is the sub-component. First one is CLS. It stands for Common Language Specification. Common Language Specification, we can say that. Next component is there, that is CTS. It stands for Common Type System. Common Type System here. Yes. Common Type System. It is also called as Data Type System. Next one is there GC. Garbage Collector is there. Garbage Collector. Garbage Collector, sir. Next subcomponent is JIT. Just-in-time compiler. Already we have shown in the execution process, that is just-in-time compiler, we can say that. This is the second component and its subcomponent. Because CLR cannot understand all the programming language syntactical rules and regulations, and also CLR cannot understand all the programming language data type system mechanism. So first I'm talking about common language specification. Suppose as a programmer, according to my requirement, if I choose C#.NET language, so I need to follow C#.NET syntactical rules and regulations. And some other programmers, if they implement the code in VB.NET, they should follow VB.NET rules and regulations. So ultimately what I'm saying, every programming language is having its own rules and regulations. One programming language cannot understand other programming language syntactical rules and regulations. But at the time of running the program by using CLR, CLR cannot understand the rules and regulations of every language. So that's what, in that context, CLS is going to take responsible to convert all programming language syntactical rules and regulations into CLR understandable format. So common language specification is a subcomponent of CLR. At the time of program execution, this CLS common language specification component will convert all the language syntactical rules and regulations into CLR understandable format. Then only CLR can support runtime environment for your programming code. And as the same thing like that, every programming language is having its own data type system. Like C# data type system is different, VB.NET data type system is different, and F#, J#, other programming language data type system is different. Okay, so here CLR also having its own data type system mechanism. But while writing the program in C#, we should follow C# data types. No, while writing the code in VB, we should follow VB.NET data types. So though we are using respective language data type system, but at the time of executing by the CLR, CLR is having its own data type system. It cannot understand any other language data type system. In that context, CTS will take responsible to convert the programming language data type system into CLR understandable format, CLR data type system, so that CLR can understand all the data types of other languages by its own data type system through it can provide runtime environment for .NET applications. So ultimately what I mean to say, CLS will take responsible to convert all the programming language syntactical rules and regulations into CLR understandable format. CTS will take responsible to convert all the programming language data type system into CLR data type system format. Now, ultimately, next garbage collector is subcomponent. It is very, very important. Nowadays, if you take any programming language, garbage collector is internally involved. So in C#.NET also, garbage collector is a built-in component. This garbage collector is mainly provide what automatic memory management. Yes, garbage collector is used to provide automatic memory management, sir. Automatic memory management, we can say that. So why automatic memory management? Generally, when we write programming code as a programmer, we need to create multiple objects. So some objects might be useful objects and some objects, so it might not be useful objects. So all the objects will need some memory. So whatever the objects are there, useful objects, for that we need to allot memory. Garbage collector will allot the memory for useful objects. Unused objects means which is not useful. Garbage collector will destroy the memory for the unuseful object. This is called garbage collector working style. So automatic memory management is just a process allocating the memory for useful objects and deallocating the memory for unuseful objects. This process is called automatic memory management. So in C#.NET, while writing the programming, as a programmer, we are not going to write any memory management task code. We are focusing on logic code, but complete memory management will take place what? Garbage collector only internally. So the programmer burden will be reduced. We need not to concentrate on memory management code. Automatically garbage collector is integrated, that will take care complete memory management. And final subcomponent JIT, just-in-time compiler. This compiler will be used in second compilation of .NET program execution. So with the help of these two components only, .NET will run, sir. So first component, base class library. These are building blocks of .NET. Without these base class libraries, you can't write the program. After writing the program by using this base class libraries, without CLR, we can't run the program. So to execute the program, CLR component is required. To write the program, base class libraries or framework class libraries are required, sir. These two are very, very important in .NET programming writing process. This is .NET components here. Now coming to this application area of .NET. Generally, what kind of applications we can build using .NET, I'm going to tell you. Application area of .NET. See, mainly our concentration is these applications are mainly in our sessions. First application is console application. Next application is Windows Forms applications. Windows Forms application. Next, web applications. Yes, web applications. Web application. Next one is MVC application, Model View Controller application. MVC application, Model View Controller application. Next, what? Entity Framework applications. Entity Framework application. And next one is WPF application, Windows Presentation Foundation applications. This is WPF application. WPF is an extension of window form. Next, WCF application, that means Windows Communication Foundation. Next, we can say mobile applications or gaming applications. We can build gaming application, and also we can build mobile application by using Xamarin tool in .NET gaming application, and network based applications also we can build using .NET. Network based applications and business applications means what? If client is having its own requirement according to their business needs, we can collect the requirements from the application. We can build the business applications also possible using .NET. and many more applications are possible to implement using .NET only. But in our session, main concentration on these applications only we are focusing mostly. But even according to client requirement, we should focus on network-based business, mobile, gaming, WCF, WPF. Okay, yes. So mainly console application, this I'm going to cover in C#.NET. So console application, Windows Forms applications are standalone applications. These are desktop applications or standalone application. Desktop or standalone application means what? The application, once we design and build on whenever we include in the particular computer, on that computer only it will work, remaining systems it will not work. That is standalone or a desktop application. But whereas web application is there, by using ASP.NET, we will focus on web application development. So web applications means these are the distributed applications or online applications, completely web applications. These applications we can build by using ASP.NET. And these are online applications or internet application. Once web application hosted on the server that can be run over the world by entering web address in the internet. So this is web application or distributed online applications. Also, we can call it as web application. But in console application, I'm going to cover complete C# basics like operators, control flow statements, data types, data structures, and what we can say, control flow statements means logical statements, arrays, collections, object-oriented programming, everything. Maximum 60% of C#.NET syllabus I'm going to cover with console application. Remaining 40% of the C#.NET syllabus I'm going to cover with Windows Forms application. So Windows Forms application, why it is required means we need to communicate with the database. So we are going to interact with window form, and we can fill the data into window form whenever we submit the data, and this data will go and directly stored into SQL Server database. So ADO.NET concepts also we will cover in Windows Forms application, as well as web application also it's possible. But in ASP.NET web application, mainly we will focus on this web application, ASP.NET Core MVC, Entity Framework, Web API concepts we are going to focus in web applications. And MVC application is common, Entity Framework application is common, it's a part of ASP.NET only. So this is application area of .NET, and these are the .NET components here. And now code execution process of .NET this is, and .NET Core versions, these are .NET Core 6, .NET 6 or .NET Core 6.0. This is our main version. And these are the framework and Visual Studio versions. But ultimately I'm saying Visual Studio 2022 I'm using, SQL Server 2019 I'm using. If you want, you can use SQL Server 2022 also. These two softwares, if you're ready in your computer, if you install, then it will be easy to manage our .NET code throughout these lectures. So for 4 months, 4.5 months duration, we can manage this code with Visual Studio 2022 to SQL Server 2019 only. So community versions are free versions. If we go for enterprise and professional edition, that are not free versions. Microsoft will provide license versions only, professional and enterprise edition. Professional edition means small teams, they can able to purchase from Microsoft. Enterprise edition means large members working purpose, they'll purchase from Microsoft. And community or students point of view and faculty point of view, community version is enough. Tomorrow I'll assist you how to communicate with Visual Studio and SQL Server 2019 with Microsoft side, and how to get it and how to download it. I'll show you clearly. And immediately tomorrow session, I will start with C#.NET basic introduction and programming part. I am going to start without delay. So this is about today lecture. We covered in this lecture application area, .NET components and code execution process of C#.NET, .NET code versions, .NET framework and Visual Studio version. And I'm not going to use any .NET framework version, but just as a .NET developer, you must and should aware of this version history, and mainly focus on .NET Core version from 2016 onwards till 2023. What are the major versions are there in .NET Core? You should focus. So our version is this one only in our classroom. So this is about today's session. That's all for now. If you have any question, you can feel free to ask me now regarding this session. Tomorrow, we are going to start with coding part with C#.NET. So once I start coding part, then it's going to be logical programming will start. No. Console application, Windows Forms application, web applications, we are going to build. Okay, WPF is not. WPF instead of we are using Windows Forms application. Yes. So these applications we are going to be covered in our sessions. WCF don't use because it is an extension is there already. We have web API application. No, web API we are going to use instead of WPF. So this business network based mobile we cannot use because according to their specific programming they can use. I'm saying that using .NET these many applications we can able to build. It doesn't mean that we have to learn all the application area. So most commonly used application, conceptual understanding purpose, we use console application. Database communication purpose, we use Windows Forms application. But in real-time scenario, we are going to involve the coding part in web applications. No, we are web application with MVC, entity framework, web API. That are real-time usage. Yes, APIs only. Yes. In .NET, how to create APIs? API testing will be there by using Swagger tool, Postman services, and how to create endpoints and HTTP verbs. Everything will cover in web API only. So this is about today's session. Tomorrow also you can join on the same link at same time 5 p.m. Once again, I'm telling you already I have discussed in the last lecture. This session for only 7 to 10 days, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. it's going to happen. After 7 to 10 days, it will shift into 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Syntax of the written code. Yes, exactly. Syntactical rules and regulations, it will check common language specification. Immediately it will convert that specification into CLR understandable format. Then CLR can provide the execution environment for our .NET applications. Yes. So thanks for attending today, and tomorrow also you can attend by using same link, and clearly we will explain C#.NET. We will introduce tomorrow. How many max people present? I'm not sure about that. It might be 5, 10, 15, 20, any number. It's not a matter. Already 12 students are there in 7 p.m. It's going well. And in this batch, at least 10 students if join, then we will merge into that 7 p.m. That's okay for us. It's not matter of students. We will not focus on that. Okay. So even one single student came for my session based on my trust. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to teach them complete .NET course. Yes, it's okay. So we are not going to tell you any gaming programming. So we are not going to be concentrate on gaming level. Once you learn C#.NET logic, how to implement gaming application, you need to take care from your side. We will not help regarding this gaming applications, network and business because it's not our part. Our part is focusing on development process, is only application development, not gaming applications. So that's all for today. Have a nice time. See you tomorrow again. You can use same link at same time. Yes, we will cover MVC application. No, obviously I have included model view controller. See, MVC is not a separate application. Our logic pattern will be divided into 3 patterns: presentation layer, business access layer, data access layer. Presentation layer means what actually this is view. Business access layer means C, controller. Model means database access layer. Just. So we are going to see MVC main target is separation of concern. Means our logic is going to be separate into separate layers. So modification will be easy. Security will be provided easily. That's what we are going to be cover MVC patterns. Before MVC, the programmers were written code in one layer only. presentation layer code, data access layer code, business access layer code is in one layer. That was not, because if you change one layer code, that other layer may be impact. Now when we use MVC, there is no disturbances, because once we modify the view logic, then controller logic, model logic will not affect. That is called separation of concern, we can say. Yeah, nowadays everywhere it is MVC is there. Even Java people, Python full stack developer, Django also we use MVT pattern, model view template. In .NET MVC is there, Java also MVC is there. This is very important. So that's all. We'll see tomorrow again at same time.